So we go to what some consider the most important piece in this entire tape as far as what the tape is known for, and one of the most infamous weddings in the history of professional wrestling. And that, of course, is the wedding of the Butcher Paul Vachon. To me, this is the ultimate what the hell moment in professional wrestling. I love it. Can you talk a little bit about the backstory leading up to the wedding?
Well, doing a little research, it seems that many fans still can't understand why they even had this, because Butcher Vachon was a enhancement talent at the time. He wasn't in any angles. He wasn't doing anything big. So putting such a spotlight on him was really odd at the time. But I think it just goes back to the TNT show saying, hey, there's a guy getting married. Maybe we can make a big segment out of it. And that's kind of how it got started. That's all I can think of, because he wasn't in any sort of role that would put the spotlight on him like this.
And make a big segment out of it. They did. This is one of the all-time greats. Is this the first wedding in wrestling that was at least, promoted to being in TV and video and on a big event?
I really think so. This was actually on an episode of TNT, and I was going to talk about that as well, because the entire wedding actually aired on TNT and as well as this segment.
So how much longer is the actual wedding than what you get on the Coliseum Home video release?
It's the entire show. I actually took some notes on it to go over after we touch on this part, but there's actually matches. There's the wedding. There's segments in between the wedding and the reception with certain wrestlers and interviews that are very unique. So I was not aware of that until going back and finding this out, but it's very telling to go back and actually watch the wedding as well, because it's just as crazy, I would say.
Yeah, so we'll do our best to do a little bit of a play-by-play here. We won't capture everything, and that's okay. You do need to go back and watch this. If you're listening to this podcast, we'll give you some homework. Please go watch the Vachon wedding. It's amazing. So in attendance, you have really, honestly, a pretty elite roster of folks here, from Jesse the Body Ventura. Of course, Captain Lou is going to be in there. Mad Dog Vachon has to be there supporting his family members here. The fabulous Moolah, classy Freddie Blassie. A lot of random mass people. We'll get to one of those in particular here in a bit. George the Animal Steele. The Wild Samoans are there, which I know we touched on earlier. This was a little bit different than the earlier segment. A young Rikishi, Skylo Low is there. I mean, like I said, it's a pretty impressive group of wedding attendees.
Yeah, but this is what the bad guys did when you weren't seeing them behind the scenes. That was my imagination back then. We were just finally getting to see them hang out and party together.
So we go through a few different kind of curated segments. Typical weddings have toasts and dancing and singing and giving gifts. And so we kind of go through those in progression. We start off with some gifts. Captain Lou gives them a box of rubber bands. Classy Freddie Blassie gives them some eyeglasses so Vachon's lovely bride can inspect the tiny diamond that he got her. So Blassie then, of course, show his large diamond. I don't know how much innuendo was there, or if it just was, hey, I'm a rich guy and I have a lot of jewelry. But to me, it definitely came across as some penis jokes.
Yeah, I would not doubt that for a second with this group.
So we get to the toasts next, and George Steele, I don't want to say he steals the show, but probably the most memorable of all of these, where you have this long delay, this dramatic build, and they're saying, hey, George, what's your toast? What's your toast? And of course, he blurts out the epic line, pumpernickel.
Yeah, what can you say about pumpernickel? I don't know.
Exactly. At this time also, we see Albano is clearly just drunk. And to the point that Afa and Sika are even laughing, out of character, which I think is what you were alluding to earlier, where it's a lot different than their savage, just eating raw fish guts. And here in the wedding, they seem a little bit more civilized, a little bit more like kind of a commoner.
Yeah, but part of that, and then I'll go deeper into that after we get through this segment and reveal a little bit more about how they were on the actual TNT show airing of this.
So Ventura talks, he does his toast. He just talks about the scum always rises to the top, just a quick little Hill one-liner there. Skylolo tries some sort of toaster joke, doesn't land, and then he just starts yelling at Captain Lou Albano in French. And then Dr. D comes out. I personally think probably stole the show here with just his, his badass, I'm feeling hostile toast. I'll tell you, this has been said by hundreds of people, so nothing new here, but I will concur with the opinion that Dr. D was such a prototype to what we see in Steve Austin at a later date. I mean, what a badass, what a redneck, crazy, legitimate bounty hunter after this, badass. Dr. D, I'm so glad he's getting a kind of a little bit of a renaissance here with the recent airing of Dark Side of the Ring, but man, he's so good.
Yeah, and running this tape back then, it was like he was just in the mix of the other bad guys pretty much. But the thing was, around 1997, I think WWF put this tape on sale. They sold a few of the old Coliseum videos. So after watching this in 86 and 87, and then turning it on in 97 and buying the tape, it jumped off the screen like, whoa, this guy is stone cold. And this is exactly, the way he dresses, the way he talks, the attitude. I was just blown away by rewatching it 10 years later during the time Stone Cold was really at his approaching his height, and just seeing the similarities. It was crazy. Yeah,
he's Dr. D, a man way ahead of his time, and awesome in the ring as well. I don't think he gets enough credit there. I mean, he was a great wrestler in his own right.
Yeah, definitely. Him and Hogan was, we'll talk about on the Hulkamania tape, but he had quite a run in the AWA as well. And it's crazy that he left the business when he did.
So after the toast, we get some dancing. The main highlight here is Captain Lou teases mooning the audience. Thank goodness we don't see that. And then we get to some singing with the Wild Samoans and Sky Low. This was awkward.
Yeah, I just put WTF in my notes because I don't know what the hell was going on here. It was almost like they were forcing him to sing, and then he wanted to sing, and he did sing. So I'm just not sure.
And you have drunk Albano trying to rip off Skylolo's shirt, kind of. It just seems like things are getting weird.
Pour beer down the back of his pants, I think I saw, but maybe it was retaliation for Skylolo's "What the hell do you want?" a toaster line earlier. I thought that was pretty amusing when he tried to tell the joke and then just threw it out and said, "What the hell do you want? A toaster?"
Yep. And then we get to the dessert, which this is the cake smash that leads into the over the top, food fight with cake and everything. And there's so much going on here. To me, a couple of takeaways was Vachon doesn't even care. He's laughing and stuff. It's almost like he's okay, this is super fun. I don't give a shit that my wedding is ruined. You have Mad Dog Vachon awkwardly trying to hit Lord Alfred Hayes with a chair. So I don't know if he got the memo. But that was just really weird. It was an odd moment there. And then all the stuff in this segment, the weirdest and one that's kind of shrouded in a little bit of mystery was the infamous mask lady, and this very quick, short, awkward exchange where it appears that, George the Animal Steele, the Samoans were, I'm not saying taking liberties, but they looked like they might have gone a little bit too far in kind of roughing her up or whatever. And you hear this screaming and this very high pitched scream. And, you cut to, and McMahon's yanking her to the back, oh shit, something got real here. Do you have any insight on who that was, what was going on there? Because they just came across very, pushing the envelope even for that era.
Yeah, I'll jump a little bit ahead because that was a big question, I think, for people who were talking about this video. They were still wondering, even in recent years, who this was. And there was no reference to her name or anything on this version. But if you watch the TNT airing of this and you watch the wedding, they were actually announced. They announced the guests in the crowd, and her and the masked man in the crowd were announced as Mr. and Mrs. Executioner at the wedding. So that is the only known name that she is known by. No who's under the mask or anything like that. But she finally has a name after all these years of who they refer to her as, at least.
Well, good for her. Hall of Fame induction down the line?
Hey, you never know when they run out of names.
Exactly right. So, thank goodness the Me Too movement wasn't going on here, because I think that could have been an issue. But yeah, that was just a very awkward. It kind of took me out of the moment when I was watching it. But one of wrestling mysteries: who was that masked executioner? And then the question I had to you is just this whole segment. I'm sure it got a lot of laughs, and I'm sure Vince loved it, and it was exactly what he was going for. But my question is, was it worth it to have the Samoans on there seemingly breaking character, whether it was singing or laughing or, especially with Captain Lou running around going crazy? Everybody would laugh. So was the positives out of the wedding and the silliness, was it worth maybe losing a little bit of oomph from the Samoans, as well as Dr. D? Even though he stole the show, you even get a couple cuts to him on the Coliseum Home video release where he's smiling and looking like he's breaking character. To me, I don't know. I don't know if the good outweighs the bad here.
I think with Dr. D, it works because he's finally smiling because he created so much all hell breaking loose chaos in this moment. So I think for his character, it works. Actually, on the TNT airing before the reception between the wedding, they actually, big reveal, had the Samoans do a promo with Vince McMahon where Afa actually spoke English. So right before this, he actually spoke English, and I was blown away by it. I was watching this, and I guess they were setting up the reception area and whatnot, and they actually spoke. I guess they were in between, almost during the time they turned. I guess we'd have to look up the dates on when they actually turned and left Captain Lou, but they went to Sika, and he still sold it like he didn't know what they were talking about and had to shoot back to Afa. So Sika kept everything under wraps, but Afa, as revealed, can speak English. I guess when they turned, that was like the whole point. Hey, you can like them now because they can't speak English at least.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, it's a pretty big moment even for me to be like, wow, I never knew this existed.
So overall, any other kind of hidden gems or tidbits or anything out of this wedding that you want to tell our listeners?
So after seeing the episode or the video with the wedding reception, I had to get on the TNT episode on the network and see what all aired, actually. Because maybe this made more sense if we watched everything as it aired. And it turns out the entire wedding is on here. And I'm sure we're probably not going to be reviewing every TNT episode ever because that would be quite a task. And I'm not sure our listeners...
You never know. You never know.
We're going to leave it to the listeners on that. If there are listeners out there that really want us to do it, we may figure out a way. But it would be a challenge on all sides. But we would do it. I'm not saying we wouldn't do it. But just in case, I had to review this. So, because
we love you, our WLS listeners, we love you so much. We will do whatever you want us to do.
And if that's not proof, I don't know what is. So they start the wedding. Actually, there's a ring set up, traditional wrestling wedding. Vince welcomes us and lets us know that there's quite a guest list that's been invited to this wedding, including the Reagans, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, Liz Taylor, and Eddie Murphy. So they made sure to almost live up to those expectations. Howard Finkel announces the ceremony. He announces all the guests to start the show, Mr. and Mrs. Executioner, as we talked about. He lets us know that the Reverend's name is Reverend Lipschitz. Perfect, because, what else could it be?
Exactly.
The fabulous Moolah is the maid of honor, and Captain Lou reveals that he wants to marry her. If we didn't notice her earlier, the little person that Captain Lou is dancing with is Diamond Lil. I don't know if you were familiar, but she is the little person that lived with the fabulous Moolah over all of her run. She was always live with her and the little person wrestler, I guess you could say back then. For some reason, Jesse the Body ruins the flowers on her way to the ring. He just takes them and destroys them. So a little sign of the chaos to come. Sky Low Low is the ring bearer, of course, because who else could be?
Why not?
And this is a pretty big giveaway. This is a pretty big thing here that they let us in on that you wouldn't know if you just watched the Coliseum video. But they start questioning why George the Animal Steele gives the bride away. He actually gives her away as her father would, but as they question this, the people in the crowd are asking, and the bride actually lifts her veil and sticks out her tongue to reveal a green tongue. So there's a hint that, is she related to George? Is George her father? This is deep stuff that you can only find here, because who else is going to look into all this stuff? But as they actually get married, Dr. D steps in the ring and body slams Vachon. He just starts beating the hell out of him. Like, I don't know how they made it to the reception after this, but the Dr. D starts kicking their ass right there. Let's see. And then we jumped into the actual in-between segments as they move to the reception. Jesse claims that his hair, the colors that you may have seen in this video, were designed by Cyndi Lauper. So Vince questions Jesse on if Cyndi herself or her hair designer actually came up with this hairstyle.
Wow.
We actually get a match, and I put exclamation because, wow, wrestling, involved in this whole thing, even though it's not on the Coliseum video. But Jesse Ventura and Ivan Putski is what we get to see on the TNT version. They don't show the.
That's a pretty good match.
It is, but they don't show the finish because you can't do that back then. That's a big match. You got to make sure people at home don't know the finish because that ruins everything. Another one of these interview segments that's very telling. Jesse talks about coming back from his blood clot. I didn't even know they ever mentioned this on TV when Jesse had his off time away from the ring. And he claims he got the blood clot from Vietnam /Agent Orange, and he's suing the government, suing Ronald Reagan, And I figured this was a little look at his future in the political realm because, hey, we're in 1984 and he's talking about politics and suing the government already. We're following up with the Samoans speak English, which is another shocker. And a little bit of what we talked about earlier, Afa and Sika's face run. We actually see Afa and Sika take on Fuji and Tiger Chung Lee. What a rare match with the Samoans on the face side. You didn't see a whole lot of those back then. And during this match, we see a rare shot of Captain Lou just roaming backstage. He's just walking around, and the announcers are saying, oh, is he coming out here? We don't know.
And all of these matches would have been great on the show because you have the tie-in with Putski and Polka Power, the dancing. You have Tiger Chung Lee. We already know about the bricks. It also begs the question, how is Fuji not in any bloopers, bleeps, and body slams? I mean, I feel like this would have been perfect for Fuji. I know it predates Fuji Vice, right?
Yes, the most infamous ribber of all time, and he's not even featured. I guess because he was still in the ring mostly at this time. I think he was still wrestling more than managing, so he probably had more serious matches. The next segment, another kind of mind-blowing thing, is another interview segment, same place as the Samoans were earlier. This one is with Captain Lou, except he's talking about MS and his work with the MS Foundation. At this point, it's like, what? And he was still a heel in this time. He's talking about his work with Cyndi Lauper and whatnot, so it's kind of walking that line of shoot work type of stuff here. It was really surprising to see.
Wow.
So the reception on TNT was approximately about 45 minutes. They edited some parts out. They edited out some of the presents and whatnot. Jesse ended up giving them hair color because we're talking about hair color and Jesse tonight. Afa and Sika gave them a fish, an ode to the Samoan cooking segment. Moolah gave her beauty products, and then Dr. D inspected all the gifts because he has a right since he brought one. So there's a mystery gift. Some people believe this might have been from Dr. D, but Vince opens the gift and quickly shuts it and says, whoa, we can't show that on TV. So that's been one of those things that maybe something of a sexual nature, never been revealed or talked about. So obviously not good enough to put on the tape. And then we go to another match with Butcher Vachon, who is his wedding, so why not have a match against the Junkyard Dog? And Butcher Vachon gets squashed. How fitting. Finally, the feature match of the week is Moondog Rex against Barry Windham, which is a long competitive match. So that's the feature match of the week. One of the other notes I had was Dr. D. The actual build-up to him starting the cake fight was a lot longer than what they showed on the tape. He actually gave a whole speech about questioning Butcher Vachon's wife as far as if she knows how to take care of a man and how she's supposed to listen and whatever he asks her to do, she's supposed to do. And I think that all built up to the maybe the only planned spot of the night on the video where she says, but I don't like cake, dear. That seemed like the only line they may have thrown in to say, here we go and start this whole thing. And I thought it was funny that as she's saying this, suddenly everybody on the tables has pies. Just conveniently, they all have pies on their tables, and that's how it all starts. I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, you don't know how a Vachon wedding runs. That could be that could be a tradition there where everybody gets a pie ready to go. You never know.
So that pretty much wraps up the full version of what you would have seen if you had watched the TNT version of this wedding, which was crazier than the tape, I think, because it added even more questions and more randomness. So I had to go back and see what it was all about.
And crazier on a lot of different levels, it sounds like. Not only just kind of just what the hell's going on, but also like some really, unique portrayals and things that they call out, which typically didn't happen in that era. Like you mentioned with Albano, talking about the good stuff that he does despite still being a heel and all that good stuff. So, wow, like that might need its own show itself to really dissect that.
Yeah, we're moving that way to actually want to have a TNT review, as much as I hate to say it. But we're going to listen to the listeners. If anybody has an interest in hearing about TNT shows, maybe specific ones, because there are a few TNT shows that have some moments that are really WTF worthy.